Hi, my name's Teresa, and I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. And this is a demo. This is not intended to be therapy. This is not advice for anyone. This is just for your entertainment only to see a role play of inference-based cognitive behavior therapy. If you are looking to work with someone who provides I-CBT, please go to the icbt.online website. I do start off those my sessions with a review and an agenda building. And so you'll see there that I do check in with the clients to see if there's anything pressing before I dive into each module with the client. If you're wanting to skip ahead and or maybe even to watch this video faster, it's I share this on YouTube so that you can up the watching speed. You can make it 2 times faster if you want to get through this much quicker. But these videos are intended for those who really want to see the full session. And we're like demystifying what ICBT treatment looks like. So in the very first consultation, I showed them the ICBT iceberg so that they understand that we're targeting inferential confusion and what that consists of, which we've got the narrative, we've got logic, we've got the vulnerable self, and we've got the distrust of the senses and the self. Okay, so that is all part of what we're going to be targeting in treatment. And so throughout treatment, we're going to try to come at each piece of the inferential confusion to try to resolve it, but it is a stepped process. We introduce the sequence, the obsessional doubt sequence, and that is the intervention. The client is learning that there's a sequence there. They're able to see that this isn't just, I'm just triggered. They're able to see that there's a whole process at play. There's a prompt, there's an obsessional doubt, there's a consequence, there's anxiety and discomfort, and then there's a compulsion. He was able to track his own obsessional doubt sequence, and he was able to see that for himself, and he was able to reflect and say, what would remain of my OCD if the doubt were false? There are times that you might be working with a client and we may not get through the full module in the session, or you might bounce around a little bit. It really depends on your client's needs. And so always use your clinical judgment for what you're thinking the client needs in that session. Okay, we're not trying to force the client into ICBT treatment. We're trying to modify the treatment for what our clients need. And so there's flexibility there. I'm going to put some text in each part of the treatment to help the clinician understand this is what we're covering here. And then I just use the ICBT modules for myself. I don't use other formats. I just pull that up in session, and then I will send clients like maybe some other graphics and things like that, or maybe sometimes I will share different graphics later on in treatment. But the modules work pretty well, breaking it down for the client. Feel free to use whatever modules you've put together, what other creative graphics that are helpful to make the point. We're working with a very broad range of clients and their needs. So modify this therapy to help the client understand what the point is that you're trying to make. We're planning to dive into module one today of ICBT. And I wanted to see, was there anything else you wanted to add to the agenda before we take off?
No, no, sounds good to me.
Okay, let's do it. Do you have the packet there with you?
I do, yes.
Okay. We're not going to go through every paragraph of the packet. We're just going to start off with some main points, and then you have that where you can read through it more thoroughly after the session if you like. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, let's do it. I do want to start off with what is OCD? You've done a lot of research, as we've talked about, like you're very familiar with OCD is an obsession and a compulsion. So, it's got those two main components. Would you be willing to share with me a little bit about what comes to mind when you think of obsession?
Obsession is just something that I can't stop thinking of, that's just on my mind, and it preoccupies me in a kind of a forceful, unpleasant way.
Yeah, so it's like bothersome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. And we talk a little bit about OCD being like some people have heard like a cycle or a loop. we're going to get very specific today about what we mean by obsession. So we're going to integrate some of the I-CBT language, and we're going to get very specific that an obsession comes down to it's a doubt. If there's an obsessional doubt, and a doubt is about a what if or a might be or a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're really identifying that. That's probably a little bit unique to the inference model and how we're going to look at OCD. So we're going to be bringing in some specifics to what we're talking about today. Okay. Any questions about an obsession being about a possibility, a maybe, a what if, or a might be?
So an obsession is a what if.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's identify a compulsion.
Okay.
Okay. We're planting the seed here that there's a sequence. Okay. And without the doubt, there's not going to be a compulsion. Okay.
Yeah, okay. The obsession comes first and then the compulsion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's probably easy to remember because obsessive compulsive disorder.
Right,
So,
right.
we talk about OCD in that kind of like flow of, okay, we've got the obsession and now we've got the compulsion. Let's scroll down a little bit on your packet. So we just talked about the first few paragraphs, but let's go down to, I think it'll be the third page where you're going to see a bunch of little squares.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, on the top left, it's going to say internal or external trigger.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and take a minute and I'll be quiet so you can just kind of like read through those different sequences.
Okay. Okay.
Those are different doubts. Those are different sequences. As you can see on the left side, the very left side, the trigger or the prompt, we're in I-CBT, we're not saying that that's the start of OCD, even though it's all the way on the left. We're saying like, that's just normal day stuff. There's lots of people who lock their car. There's lots of people who read scary stories and they don't have OCD. So those on the very left, they're not specific to OCD. They're just prompts that kind of remind us of a doubt. But the very next box under obsessional doubt, that's actually the problem in OCD. That's what we're going to try to work on resolving in this treatment. And that's, we're saying that that's really where the issue begins. That's the obsession. Okay. Do you see how those start with a might be or a could be or a possibility?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So then the next box down, which is under the consequence, that's the consequence is if that doubt came true, this is what would happen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not uncommon when we have OCD to be really focused on the consequence. For example, when we say we feel that discomfort and we say, I'll get sick, the house will burn down, bad things can happen, right? And so that usually is where our brain registers like, okay.
Yeah.
But we're going to learn a little bit about how there's something before that, and that's that doubt. We'll keep revisiting that throughout treatment, but today we're really just familiarizing with the sequence you can see there. Okay. And then do you see under anxiety and discomfort?
Yeah.
Right. So So that can be just, this will be awful, this will feel terrible. Also, there might be some things you notice in the body when you're having a doubt. There might be
Yeah.
some very, very specific body sensations. And then the last piece there is the compulsion.
Yeah, the compulsion. Yep, the action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think about seeing all of these different examples of OCD?
Yeah, it breaks it down a little bit and it helps me get a glimpse maybe into how my process is of where I get to the stuff that really torments me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of weird to see it like broken down step by
Yeah,
step.
yeah, it really takes it apart and I can see the progression there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you be willing to maybe as build one of these for you, for your
Yeah, I
OCD?
think so. I think so, yeah.
Hmm. We could, what we could do is we could get a little familiar with this by building another one, which by the way, in this module, his name is David too. So
Okay.
let's go ahead and let's go down to David's story, and we'll warm
Okay.
up to this idea that there's a sequence that we can build.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go down to the page that at the top left it says David.
Yeah, okay, I see it.
Go ahead and take a minute, read through that story, and if you like, you can read it out loud if that's easier for you to absorb what it says. But if you want to read quietly, I'll sit here quietly while you get through.
Okay, I'll read it quietly.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So David has a story.
Yeah.
Okay, there's his story. And his story might be similar to yours, it might be different. So we're going to learn about how it doesn't matter what the theme or what gets the OCD going, it'll fit into a sequence. And so we're going to be looking at David's sequence today. We're going to take his information, we're going to put it in a sequence.
Okay.
The internal or external prompt, again, it's not necessarily OCD, right? Like it's just what gets the person getting closer to having that doubt, right? Like maybe they're in an environment that prompts this off.
Yeah.
So David actually might have a couple prompts. What do you think could be his prompt?
Looking at this, it seems maybe reading about someone killing a child in their driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
Yeah.
something that is kind of like a normal thing where you can read stories like that because that's something that can happen. So because from what you were saying, it's not like it's just everyday stuff. It's not OCD yet at that point. To me, that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he read about a scary story, and then he started having doubts. And his second prompt can actually be every time he goes outside and he's
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
good. What's his doubt? The next part of his sequence, like what's his what if? What is the might be?
Yeah. So the what if would be like what if like he could hit somebody like a child in his driveway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if I could hit a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Now the consequence, the next box there is if he did hit a kid, this is what he's afraid would happen. So what are his
Right.
consequences?
It looks like it would be like what going to jail or having to live with that death on his mind. Yeah, it'd be like these negative things happening to him.
Yeah. Yeah. The consequence also could be like that the kid gets hurt and dies. He could kill a child, like the child
Right.
dying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's tracking in his thinking, he's got like all of these different consequences that are scary for him.
Mm-hmm.
So now the anxiety or discomfort, what's going on for him when he's got this doubt?
Well, looks like it's every time he gets in his car, he's feeling anxious. And so, because he's thinking about this stuff, these what ifs and these consequences, and it makes him very anxious when he goes to get in his car and pull out of his driveway to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything going on in his body?
Oh yeah, he's jittery. He's got a sinking feeling in his stomach. Yep.
Yep. So his body's like, uh-oh, this could be bad, right? Making that feel like he's got that feeling too. So he's got a few things going on. Now, what's his compulsion and or compulsive avoidance?
Yeah, so it looks like he checks under the car. Every time he gets out of the car, he checks everywhere to make sure he didn't hit anyone underneath. And like the avoidance seems to be that he might not even want to drive anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How was it for you to take David's story and put it into a sequence? Like we really broke it down.
Yeah, I mean, it was good because it was all laid out there, just the narrative. And then I was able to break it apart just like before, looking at those examples. So having seen those examples, it helped. And now I was able to take these elements and put them into each box and see how the sequence progresses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now you are a master conceptualizer. How are you feeling so far? Let's do a little check-in. Like, are you feeling like are you feeling like you're okay with us still continuing on to build some of your sequence?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have anything you wanted to share that kind of stood out to you about that sequence?
It's pretty cool because it makes sense. Like it makes sense, and it really helps taking a narrative that seems to be jumbled up and breaking it down into these elements that follow one from another sequentially. So it's like really clarifies things. So I appreciate that.
Mhm. It takes the whole story and it's like, this is happening. Oh, this is here's the
Yeah.
doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like that it's like in the paragraph, it doesn't begin like the paragraph begins about with how he's feeling anxious every time he gets in his car, but if you break it down in the sequence, you realize that that's not like where it begins. It really begins with him reading something, and then that kind of sets off the process, and then the doubt comes, the what if. So like by the time by the time the person feels anxious, maybe without this sequence they wouldn't know where that anxiety came. They might say that it just came out of the blue or something, but with this, if you can like take a look and examine the person's life and the circumstances around that anxiety, you can kind of identify these precursors that led to this anxiety point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good point. It's kind of like because you have OCD, and so you've got that feeling, right? But there's all this
Yeah.
stuff that, as you can see, there's like all this stuff going on before you even have that.
Right. Yeah. So I'm kind of like these things are floating in my head about my own situation. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I think I'm ready to start to build my sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it. Let's scroll down a little bit on that paper, and right below David's story,
Mm-hmm.
which again is your the coincidence there.
Right.
So we're going to fill in those empty boxes with yours and those
Mm-hmm.
two sequence there. Now this can be, if you're okay with it, like you could use maybe you had some doubts today that you want to use in this activity, or you can go back something in the last week or so, just whatever you're comfortable sharing. Any of these come to mind that you want to?
Yeah. I mean, it's like my ongoing thing. So I'll be in the kitchen, and my wife will be in the kitchen too, and I'll be holding a knife. So that's where, and then I'll get anxious about like hurting her with the knife.
Okay, let's start off with the prompt then. Okay,
Hmm.
what would be like this could be just like being in the kitchen or cooking food.
Yeah, but it's always about stuff like sharp stuff, like knives, especially knives, but even like maybe like a pen or something, stuff that can be used to stab and cause damage through stabbing.
Yeah. The prompt can be seeing a sharp, like seeing something that looks kind of sharp.
Yeah, it's like seeing, it's like seeing it, and like, if my wife's around, and it's even stronger. What if I hurt her? What if I stab her?
There's
What
your
if I
doubt.
like lose control in the situation and I end up like hurting her with this thing?
Yeah. Okay. So let's break it down and put it into those boxes. Okay. So you've got the prompt, which
Yeah.
is being around or holding a knife or making dinner
Hmm.
or being around sharp things. And then the what if, you were identifying the what if. So what's your doubt?
Yeah. So the what if is what if I hurt somebody? What if I hurt my wife with this thing, with this knife?
Okay. That could actually be the consequence, because that would be like I could hurt her. Maybe the what if doubt could be something along the lines of what if you said this before, what if I lose control?
Yeah. What if I lose control? What if I lose control with this in this situation where I'm handling this sharp object and somebody like my wife's around? So what if I lose control with this?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then and if you did lose control, it's like I could stab her.
Yeah, I could
I'd stab
stab
her.
her. Yep.
And what's your anxiety or discomfort in that time? What do you notice? Maybe anything in your body?
Yeah, I just get like kind of tense, like I feel it in the pit of my stomach too, and I just tense up, and it's very, very uncomfortable, and I feel like I'm a like I'm an imposter in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then what's your compulsion? What do you do when you have this doubt?
Well, I I keep looking over at looking over at my wife, and I don't want to handle the knife. No matter how much I look over at her, I can't I can calm myself down that I haven't hurt her. Because here we are with the knife in the kitchen, and she's there, and it makes me want to just like not have the knife or not be anywhere near the knife, really.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like when the other David story, when we were reading his, he doesn't want to drive, he wants to avoid, and
yeah,
it makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, right? Like when you're having those doubts, it feels real.
Oh yeah, and yeah, it feels very real, and it's what if I'm gonna hurt her, and nobody's gonna believe, everyone's gonna think that I'm this bad guy, that I meant to do it, and I'm gonna end up being ostracized by everybody, being like an outcast from society and going to jail and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you doing? Because we're building your sequence, which is
Mm.
your stuff. How are you doing by us building that sequence? Because it's OCD is very tormenting, and now we're slowing it down, but at the same time we're like looking at some of your OCD. So how are you feeling so far?
I'm feeling a mixture of like I appreciate that I can break this down. It's very kind of eye-opening, but it's also it's good in that way, but it's also reminding me of these things. I'm feeling kind of feeling those feelings a little bit because I'm having to recount these events and these sequences, but it's also very, like I said, it's very interesting to see it broken down into these component parts.
Would you say that you're feeling a doubt? Are you having a doubt right now?
Yeah,
Say that
yeah. I
you're
mean,
having any doubts right
it
now.
kind of brought it to me, how I'm feeling there. Yeah, the doubt's there. What if I need to go check and see?
Mhm.
My wife isn't here now, so what if something happened? I did something to
Mhm.
hurt her.
And this is good. Even right now in session, you're having this what if doubt. Okay.
Yeah,
So let's put it into the sequence. We've got another sequence to fill in. So the prompt is talking about having
yeah.
OCD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
good.
talking about it and talking about having OCD. I'm reminded of this, of how I might lose control with these knives. And so what if I did, what if I did lose control and I wasn't able to behave in a way that isn't harmful?
Yeah. And what do you feel in your body right now? What's your discomfort?
Well, I mean, looking at this, like the consequences of that would be that I hurt my wife. And then
Mhm.
that makes me feel very anxious, makes me feel very uneasy, and it won't go away. And I feel the need to go and check and see, and maybe, I don't know, have somehow get rid of the knives in my kitchen.
Yeah. So the compulsion you want to do right now is let me go check, get those knives out of here.
Yeah,
Let me see if the knives are still there, if everything's okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Even here, it's like OCD unfolds and we can put it right into the sequence. And that's really all we're doing in this first session is we're learning that there's a sequence. And so when you have that doubt, what we want you to do after this session and for the next week, you're gonna put it right into a sequence. You're just gonna slow things down because a lot of times we go from that prompt and we have the doubt and then we're like at the compulsion, you
right.
know.
Yeah, it's there. Okay, so yeah, I can like now I have this framework. When I feel
Mhm.
that anxiety, I can take a minute and pause and just plug things in and see how it progresses.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you be willing to make a sequence, not yours and not the other one that we read, but just someone in general, like one that isn't yours at all? And let's just make someone else's OCD sequence. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, but I'm trying to think what would be another good one.
We could do
Uh,
one like maybe someone like a totally different theme than yours, maybe like contamination.
okay. So like contamination. So what if somebody touches a doorknob in a public place, and then what if they get their germs on it? What if their germs get on this doorknob, and so then they're there? And then it would be like, what if somebody else touches the doorknob and then they have a very catastrophic reaction to the germs that were on the doorknob from that person with OCD? So then I guess that would make them feel very, very uncomfortable about having touched that doorknob. That would be the anxiety and discomfort, and they couldn't live with themselves for having touched that doorknob and for thinking about what would come from that they'd be the cause for like somebody else becoming very ill. So then I don't know, I guess they would like, for compulsive, they might maybe wash their hands a lot or maybe carry wipes. and maybe wipe every doorknobs, or maybe only touch the doorknob with a wipe, not directly. And they would even want to avoid using the doors, like going to some public place where they'd have to open and close doors.
How is it like to build someone else's that isn't your, like, that you
That
you're
was
not
very
having?
interesting. So the more I do it, the more I see how it doesn't really make sense, like for the other people. It's just this leap from something that is an everyday occurrence to this kind of outlandish fear and consequences. So that helps me see. I always knew that my stuff, like somewhere, I knew that like my fears were outlandish too, but it's still very real to me. It still tormented me, and still does. But doing it for others helps demystify it a little bit more, and helps me look at it from a distance and kind of see it more for what it is, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah, it's weird, right? To do someone else's, and we're like, well, that one doesn't bother us.
Yeah, yeah. Those ones that definitely didn't bother me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, like, what would be similar, any similarities to yours in that one?
Well, the structure is similar because that's what we're doing. Like we're looking at the structure, so I can see how the structure and the progression are similar.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, obviously they're two different things, but it's still like it's similar that, I feel like I'm gonna hurt somebody by doing something, and this person does too. Their action is like they're irresponsible.
Mhm. Yeah. You can see how it's like no matter what is going on for the person, it follows, I think you call it the same structure. Like it follows the same structure, the same
Yeah,
sequence.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And then so yeah, it's kinda like you're noticing there's similarities and some differences, but it follows the same structure, it has the same sequence. Is there anything else you want to say about how that was like for you to build your sequence and the one that you built for the person who had concerns about the door?
well, I mean, with mine, it caused me some anxiety, and it made me, I definitely felt things. But when I did the other one, or when I read about the guy with the car, David, like I didn't feel those things. It was just processing this sequence, but it wasn't visceral to me.
Yeah. 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 I'm wondering if you might be willing to do a little exercise. And it's just, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to like get up and run around, but I want to play with this idea of doubt.
Hmm.
And because we're saying OCD kicks off with a doubt, like that's the problem in OCD is that obsessional doubt. And so I'm wondering, do you have a drawer or a cabinet close by where you can like open the drawer and shut it?
Yeah, I have one right
Okay.
here at my desk.
Okay. Would you be willing to open the drawer and then close it?
Just once.
Yep.
Okay. Open, close.
Now, are you sure it's closed?
Yes.
Is it possible that it's still open?
No.
Okay. Is there a chance that it's still kind of moving a little bit and it's kind of maneuvering its way open?
Nope. It's closed. Closed as closed can be.
Okay.
I
So,
closed it.
okay. So what we did there is we did a little experiment, a little exercise where we're playing with this idea of if I was to keep prompting you and saying, "Are you sure? What if? Maybe," right?
Yeah.
All those magic words and doubt. Right? It could actually have a change in how we feel about having shut the drawer.
I mean, I definitely
Did you?
looked, like when you asked me, I looked to check to see, because you were like,
Mhm.
are you sure? So, I mean, yeah, I was like, okay, but it was easy to check because I saw it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely
Yeah.
like, okay, well, let me reassure, like, okay, she wants to know, so I'm gonna look and see.
Yeah. So do you think that your doubt about having that drawer shut changed at all the more I asked?
I don't know. Maybe I was just doing it out of politeness. It wanted to, but it was very easy to dismiss it because I
Mhm.
was pretty confident about it. So it's yeah, okay. So some doubt arose, like it changed my confidence. Like okay, something arose, but it was very easy to just address it, and by checking that it's closed. So I didn't get like really anxious about it or anything that it might be otherwise. It was just a simple verification.
Mhm. Yeah. We're playing with this idea of, can we grow doubt? Right? Where does doubt
Yeah.
come from? We can what if things. And so on your paper there's I think four different exercises that you can kind of experiment with if you like.
Hmm.
We don't have to do it in session today, but you can play with that a little bit outside of session, and you can use those, or you can just make some of your own, like play with this idea. Maybe you turn the TV off and you're like, just kind of pause for a minute and say, am I sure it's off? Kind of start what
Yeah.
ifing. Okay.
That's cool. Yeah, I
Um,
can definitely do that.
okay. And then let's go to the end well, before we do that, was there anything you wanted to share? Like anything surprise you or stand out about that exercise with closing the drawer?
I mean, it was another good illustration of how these doubts, I guess, how OCD works about just the wedging in of a doubt about something that is an everyday activity or situation, and how like you really showed me like that if there's some kind of a prompt that calls that into question, that can, I guess, we respond to that somehow, and we're prone to looking into it and wondering about
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. 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 And so let's go down. We've got a few minutes left, but let's scroll down to the last bit here of that packet you have, which is, it says at the top, training card 1. Do you have that pulled up?
Yeah, I see it.
Training card 1. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So go ahead and read those quietly and let me know once you get through those and we'll chat about them.
Okay. Okay.
All right. We're really just summarizing what we covered today in those learning points. And if you want to revisit those throughout the week, you can come back to the training card. And we're just really pointing out that OCD begins with that doubt.
Yeah, what really stood out to me is that last bullet point there where it talks about remaining firmly grounded in reality. So that
Mhm.
really highlighted the contrast there between the doubts, how the doubts are not part of reality. So that really brought stuff into view there about the contrast between reality and these doubts.
Mhm. Yeah, you're kind of noticing like, this is interesting.
Yeah, because the reality was that that drawer was closed, but when you were asking me, you were kind of trying to create those doubts. That was not reality, but it still had a potency. Your question still had a potency and a draw to me to doubt what was the reality.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So you're noticing that it's, oh, this is where doubt comes from.
Yeah.
This is my doubt. Yeah. And so I'm wondering this week's like we've covered a lot today. We went through the different like we looked at all the different sequence for different OCD themes, and we built a couple of your own. You built one that wasn't yours, and we did that experiment with the drawer. So I'm wondering throughout this week if you would be willing to like maybe track if you have a doubt when you're having OCD symptoms, and maybe in a notebook if you like to write it down. I also send you over like the blank sequence so you can use that in the portal.
Yeah.
um, and if you would be willing to, when you have a doubt, you don't have to, not every single one of them, but maybe like once a day, slow down, write it down if you like, notice the sequence. Do you think you'd be able to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I definitely want to do that. I feel like I'm gonna get insight into my daily processes, and so yeah, I definitely want to do that.
Okay. Now, let's also talk a little bit about how this could become a compulsion. Right? If we're like, oh,
Oh,
I want to do this so that I don't have OCD anymore. And so I want you to be a little flexible with that. If you're having the doubt, I don't want you to feel like you have to do this, just like you do
okay.
when, with the knife. You know what a compulsion is. You're familiar with how that drive feel like, it feels dangerous. Let me do this thing to undo the scary
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Okay, so I want you to come into this. You're just a little bit curious, kind of like we did today, right? Like you did have a little bit of some doubts, like OCD doubts in the session. And what we did is we just gently put them right into the sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm. And then I'm wondering if you would be willing to, when you have a doubt, if you can just pause for a moment and imagine what would remain of the sequence if the doubt were not true.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
And and not to debate it again, because that could be a compulsion. If you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to prove this wrong, we're not here to debate it. I just want you, like, sometimes when you have this doubt, to just kind of say, like, kind of imagine for a minute, what would remain of this sequence? How much of my OCD would be left if the doubt was false?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question to ask.
Okay. And it's in that training card, that right below the learning points. And so if you forget what you're supposed to reflect on, it's there at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have that handy.
Mhm. Okay. We're up on time, but I want to check in with you and see, was there anything that we could have done differently in this session to make it better?
Nothing that I can think of. It was very eye-opening for me and very informative. So I feel like I learned a lot about my OCD.
Hmm.
I makes me want to see what's next, because this stuff is very interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week we can go into module 2, and module 2 we're going to look at, we don't jump ahead. This week we're just noticing the sequence, and then next week we'll go into module 2, which will be, um, we're going to learn about how these doubts don't come out of nowhere, and we'll continue on with the different modules as we go. But this week is just kind of slowing things down, noticing that doubt.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about all this. This is a very, yeah, seeing this process is it makes sense. So I want to delve more deeply into it.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, anything else that you want to share before we head out?
No, no, it's been a good session.
Okay. Well, I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. See you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.